Microsoft, one of the 5 most valuable companies in the history of the United States. It is running software on your personal computer that, as of January 2026, handed your encrypted data keys to the FBI without most users even knowing those keys existed. By default, when you enable Windows encryption, the feature marketed as protecting your private data, your recovery keys are automatically uploaded to Microsoft servers. You didn't agree to that. It wasn't in the headline of any setup screen. It was buried. Today, we are not here to rant about Windows. We've all seen those videos. The broken updates, the ads in the start menu, the forced sign-ins. You already know the symptoms. Today we're going to answer the question that actually matters. What happens next? Because right now, in 2026, a moment where a 30-year monopoly is starting to show real cracks, where alternatives are maturing faster than anyone predicted. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly where Windows is headed. You'll understand why Microsoft is making the moves it's making, and you'll know what your actual options are. To understand where Windows is going, you have to remember what it was. In the 1990s, Microsoft did something genuinely historic. They made the personal computer feel personal. Before Windows, computers were for engineers, for corporations, for specialists. Windows changed that. It gave people a visual language for computing that felt intuitive. A desktop, folders, a start menu, icons you could double-click. And at its best, Windows XP, Windows 7. It was some of the best mass-market software ever made. Here's a number that tells you everything about how people felt about that era. When Windows XP officially reached end of life in 2014, hospitals, banks, the US military, ATM machines across America were running XP. That is not stubbornness. That is trust. This works so reliably that I will not leave it, even after 13 years. Now contrast that with today. Windows 10 ended support in October 2025. 40% of Windows users, 400 million people, were still on it when the deadline hit. Not because they couldn't afford to upgrade, not because they didn't know, because Windows 11 gave them no compelling reason to want to. That shift from software people loved to software people tolerate didn't happen randomly. It was the result of a very specific business decision made by one man in a boardroom in Redmond, Washington. And understanding that decision explains everything. In 2014, Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft. At the time, Microsoft was stagnant. Financially, still massive. Strategically, lost. Apple owned the premium phone market. Google owned everything else through Android. Microsoft's attempt at a smartphone? Dead. Nadella looked at the company and made a decision that would change everything about Windows and everything about your relationship with your own computer. He decided, Windows is not the product. Windows is the funnel. After Nadella, Windows became the door Microsoft uses to sell you everything else. Think about every feature Microsoft has added to Windows in the past 10 years. Forced Microsoft account during setup? That ties your identity to their ecosystem. Constant OneDrive prompts? That's a subscription. So how did we get from that? From software people loved to this? The answer begins with one boardroom decision in 2014. Windows Recall. The feature that takes a screenshot of your screen every few seconds and stores a searchable history of everything you've ever done on your computer. But here's the thing most people don't want to hear. This strategy has been phenomenally successful. In fiscal year 2025, Microsoft reported $252 billion in revenue. Over 55% of that, roughly $138 billion, came from cloud services. Not from Windows. Not from the software on your computer. From subscription services and cloud infrastructure. So here is the uncomfortable truth that explains everything. The degradation of your Windows experience is not a bug. It is the logical output of a business model. So when Microsoft has to choose between making your experience better and extracting more revenue from your device, they choose revenue. Because it works. This is not a company doing bad things by accident. This is a company rationally optimizing for its shareholders. And you are the cost of that optimization. But here's where it gets interesting, because there is a hard limit to how far you can push people before they start looking for the exit. And right now, for the first time in 20 years, that exit actually exists. It's easy to say people are frustrated with Windows. It's another thing entirely to watch a 30-year American technology monopoly start to fracture. Windows currently holds around 67% of the global desktop market. 5 years ago, closer to 76%. There are approximately 1.8 billion desktop computers in active use worldwide. 10% of that is 180 million machines, and the rate is accelerating. Here's the data point that gets dismissed until you understand what it represents. According to Valve's Steam hardware survey, Linux usage among PC gamers hit 3.2% in late 2025. 3 years ago, that number was under 1%. That's a tripling of Linux adoption among the audience that was most locked into Windows. Gamers, the people who needed Windows for their games, for their friends' lobbies, for the titles that only ran on one platform. In late 2025, enterprise IT departments, the backbone of Microsoft's actual revenue, started reporting Windows 11 update failures affecting business operations. January 2026. A cumulative update broke basic application launching across thousands of PCs. Microsoft's official solution? Uninstall the update and wait for the next one. In 2024, Microsoft's Security Response Center logged 1,393 security vulnerabilities in Windows. In 2025, that number was 11,791. That is an 845% increase in a single year. And for the first time, Microsoft is publicly admitting it. The business strategy explains the decisions, but strategy has consequences, and those consequences are now showing up in the data. This is the part most Windows videos skip. They show you the problem. They express the frustration. They tell you to try Linux, then they're done. We're not done, because we are at a genuine fork in the road for American computing. Multiple forces converging simultaneously. Path 1. The Reformation. This is the story Microsoft's PR team wants you to believe. They make Windows feel like a tool again, something that works for you. Is this technically possible? Yes. Fixing update reliability? Hard, but absolutely within reach for a company generating $252 billion a year. Here is the fundamental problem with Path 1. It requires Microsoft to voluntarily make less money. Every ad in your start menu generates revenue. Every forced OneDrive prompt moves users toward a paid subscription. And Microsoft's shareholders, the people Nadella ultimately answers to, have been rewarded enormously for exactly this strategy. For Nadella to walk into a shareholder meeting and say, "We're going to make Windows less commercial, less aggressive, less data hungry." History is not encouraging here. Microsoft has publicly committed to improving the Windows experience approximately every 18 months. More telemetry, more sign-in walls, more AI, more ads. Path 1 is possible. Path 2. The Linux moment. The alternative rises. Powerful? Yes. Private? Yes. Free? Yes. But difficult. Fragmented. Why don't you just use Linux? Because my games don't run on it. Why don't you just use Linux? Because my Photoshop doesn't run on it. Those walls are coming down, one by one, faster than most people realize. And the company most responsible for tearing down the biggest wall, in 2018, Valve released something called Proton. Proton is a compatibility layer, software that translates Windows game code. The results have been staggering. As of late 2025, over 15,000 games run on Linux with zero tweaking required. Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3. Some benchmarks show Doom Eternal running faster on Linux than Windows. The single biggest reason Americans were locked into Windows, gaming, is no longer true for the vast majority of titles. And Valve isn't stopping. They currently fund over 100 open-source developers working full-time on Linux-based technologies. Not as marketing, not as charity. Their Steam Deck, a handheld gaming PC running Linux, has already proven that a Linux gaming device can work for millions of mainstream American consumers. SteamOS for desktop is coming. And with it, for the first time, you will be able to buy a gaming PC. No Microsoft account requirement during setup. No ads in your start menu. No update that cuts your GPU performance in half overnight. The professional software wall is also weakening. Adobe, the anchor keeping American creative professionals on Windows and Mac, has seen community engineers quietly building Linux compatibility. Here's the crucial thing Path 2 optimists sometimes understate. It doesn't need to be a revolution. Windows doesn't need to collapse to 20% overnight. It just needs to lose enough power users, enough tastemakers, developers, content creators. Once that shift happens, the default effect, the single biggest structural advantage Windows has, starts to erode. And once it starts eroding, the iPhone didn't kill the flip phone in a month. Netflix didn't kill cable in a year. But looking back, the moment the tide turned is obvious. We may be at that point with Windows right now. Path 3. This is the path nobody in tech media wants to say out loud. Let me paint you a picture of 2028. You buy a new laptop from Best Buy. During setup, it asks you to sign into your Microsoft account. Your laptop has Windows 12. And honestly, it runs beautifully. Fast. Clean. It's happening in a Microsoft data center in Virginia, or Texas, or wherever Azure has capacity that day. Your laptop is essentially a terminal. Your files live on OneDrive, not locally. Locally is just a cache. Your applications are Microsoft 365. The hardware you paid for doesn't belong to you in any meaningful sense. Microsoft can update it, restrict it, change how it works. At any time, this is not science fiction.
Real product, real pricing,
Windows 365, a fully cloud-streamed version of Windows.
Expanding future is already here.
An American who buys Windows once every 5 years generates roughly $150 from Microsoft. An American paying $15 per month for cloud Windows generates a $900 over 5 years. 6 times the revenue from the same person. The question is whether Path 2 develops fast enough to give you a real choice before Path 3 becomes the only option. Because once the infrastructure is built, once your encryption keys are on their servers, once your files are in their cloud, once the habits are formed, switching stops being inconvenient. Here's what most tech coverage gets wrong about this story. They frame it as a consumer problem. Home users frustrated, gamers leaving. The deciding factor is American enterprise. Microsoft's real revenue, over 60% of it, comes not from people like you and me. It comes from businesses. And for most of the last decade, American companies have stayed loyal to Windows, not because they loved it, but because switching an entire organization's infrastructure is expensive. Nobody wants to be the IT director who told 5,000 employees to learn a new OS. In
This strategic review is
2025,
an
for the
official
first
initiative.
time,
We're examining the total
multiple
cost of
U.S.
ownership for our OS
organizations
options. The
began
alternatives show signals
seriously
must be
evaluating alternatives
Agreed.
to
Let's
Windows at
prioritize
scale.
this for further investigation.
Looking at a platform with an 845% spike in security vulnerabilities, an update track record that broke enterprise software systems in January 2026, when that question gets asked in boardrooms, when the people responsible for billion-dollar infrastructure decisions, home users leaving costs, Microsoft data, enterprises leaving costs, Microsoft revenue, and Microsoft knows it, which is why the sudden public acknowledgement of Windows problems in 2026 is not actually about home users. It's about enterprise confidence. That message isn't aimed at you. It's aimed at the CTO of an American Fortune 500 company who is currently in a meeting deciding whether their next hardware refresh should include Windows licenses. The consumer frustration you experience every day, that's the warning light on the dashboard. The enterprise migration risk, that's the engine fire. So what does all of this mean for you? Right now? Tonight? On whatever device you're using? What's actually going to happen? And what should you do? 3 paths. The Reformation, the alternative, the subscription endgame. Here is what I believe the next 5 years of American computing actually looks like. And I want to be direct with you. Not optimistic. Windows does not die. Let's get that out of the way. 67% of a market running on 1 billion devices does not vanish in 5 years. The default effect, Windows is just what a computer runs, is too deeply embedded in American culture. But Windows changes, and the change is already underway. The Windows of 2030 will look less like the tool you grew up with and more like a subscription service with a familiar desktop interface attached. At the same time, and this is the part worth paying attention to, the alternative ecosystem is maturing faster than at any point in history. Linux distributions built on Valve's work, Bazzite, Pop! OS, and what SteamOS will become, are crossing the threshold from enthusiast hobby to viable option, not for everyone, not overnight, but for a growing percentage of Americans who currently use Windows by default, not by choice. And here is the subtle thing that matters most, the thing the view count numbers miss. The people who leave Windows first are the people everyone else listens to. Developers, content creators, tech-forward professionals,
My new Linux setup is
the people their
amazing.
co-workers, friends, and family members go to when they have a computer question. When those people switch, the cultural weight of Windows starts to shift. We may be at that point with Windows right now. So what should you actually do with all of this? If Windows works for you, if the trade-offs are acceptable to you personally, stay, but go in with open eyes. Your Windows machine is not just a device you own. It is a node in a data collection and service delivery infrastructure. Know what's being collected about you. Know that your BitLocker encryption keys are on Microsoft servers by default, accessible with a warrant. Know that free updates are expanding surveillance infrastructure, not just patching bugs. These are American privacy issues. You have a right to understand them. And if you're tired, if the forced updates and the ads and the sign-in walls have been grinding you down, now is genuinely the best time in 20 years. Linux distributions like Bazzite and Pop! OS are, for the first time in their history, approachable for people who are not engineers. The community support is better than it's ever been. You don't have to commit. Try it from a USB drive. Boot it. Look around. See how it feels. Worst case, you spend a Sunday afternoon and go back to Windows. Best case, you find an operating system that treats you like an adult. Here's my final thought. The reason Windows reached 1 billion devices wasn't because Microsoft forced people onto it. It was because, for a long time, Windows was genuinely the best option. Simple. Reliable. It worked for the person using it. The reason Windows is in trouble now isn't because Linux got good, or because Apple got cheaper. It's because Microsoft stopped believing those things mattered. They calculated that Americans had nowhere else to go, that the lock-in was complete, the switching costs too high, the alternatives too weak. For a long time, they were right.
Just explored the bigger
The
picture
next
together.
5 years will
This
tell
map
us whether
shows
that
how
calculation
everything
still
connects.
holds.
From
You are
ignorance to
watching the
understanding, this
US
journey was
Code
worth it.
channel.
This channel is worth
If this
following.
video helped you see the bigger picture, not just the frustration, but the strategy, the stakes, and what's actually coming, I'd genuinely appreciate a subscribe.